Hey guys, welcome back to Contest Prep University. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Adam Atkinson. We're in episode 4 of the Fat Loss Basics series. We're going to shift over to protein. And protein does have an impact on fat loss. So I think most of us think of protein as a way of just building muscle and maybe maintaining muscle. So when you, Adam, start a macronutrient profile for a client, you're giving them the suggested amount of calories that you would ask them to shoot for. I know you start with protein as I would, to say, okay, based on your body weight, based on your goals, your metabolism, all of those variables, here's how much protein I want you to consume. What are the rules or the formulas you use as a guideline?
Yeah, well, we're looking at body type for these people. So if there's somebody prone to have more muscle mass, we're going to keep protein on the lower end. If they're an ectomorph, we're actually going to be on the higher end. And, I'll usually gauge a protein intake anywhere from like 0.75, grams of protein per, pound of lean body mass to, I'll maybe go up to like 1.5, but I don't typically go up much higher than that. I just don't see a need to do it. I remember, back in the day, when I first started coaching, I used to go by the muscle magazines and go, what was it, 2.2 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. But now you look at that and you realize, oh, these guys were just trying to sell me protein powder. So I changed a lot from 2002 to like probably 2010 was when I was really like, there's no reason to give people this much protein anymore. And still to this day, some of the most contemporary researchers suggest that lower end of protein intake. And that just holds up in the literature right now, that you really don't need much more than that.
It is really interesting. So I've seen the history all the way back to the 1980s in terms of muscle magazines. And then along came Dr. Jose Antonio, who started doing some research within the NSCA and then created the ISSN, International Society of Sports Nutrition. And the more research that was conducted in some of the labs across the country, a lot of the people coming in that are today PhDs in exercise science labs, they were looking at some of that early research that was at least addressed and confronted. And high protein studies, you have to start with the comparison of what is the RDA. And so in that about 20-year time span you're describing, there was definitely a move to say, okay, the RDA, which is based on kilograms, so it's 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, that's enough, but it's really not best. And so a lot of studies started looking at 2 times that level. So, once again, for me, about 175 pounds, 2 times the RDA, if you do that formula, is around, maybe 110, 120 or so grams of protein. And that seems astronomically low for most people. But if you start getting above that, it's just calories that could have been used for carbohydrates, which are much more metabolically active and anabolically muscle sparing. And so I've even done some of my own research. It's self-study again, doing in-body scans, and around 125 grams of protein a day is really my true 2 times the RDA level. And that's exactly the point that I can maintain my lean body mass, and more is not helpful. But I do think, as you said, for people who have incredible metabolic capacity, or they're just super hungry, then they're the ones who may need protein a little bit more often in a little bit higher amounts. But interestingly, people who don't have that kind of metabolic activity, they really need to go a little bit longer between meals and don't need quite as much protein, because they need that time interval to actually start tapping into body fat as an energy source.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you find yourself going over that recommendation often, though, just because of, bodybuilding culture, I could say?
Yeah, so 2 times the RDA is really now what the RDA should be. Almost every single science organization says 2 times the RDA is baseline. So more research has been done at up to 3 times the RDA, And they really show that that doesn't have a lot of benefit for many people. Anywhere between 2 and 3 times the RDA at least gives you a nice little cushion, as you said. And so I start at 2, and then I go to, 2.5 to 3 times the RDA. And I really do consider 3 times the RDA max, even though there are some newer studies that show for this weird outlier of a person, maybe even 4 or 5 times, which is now where we're getting back to the old 1980s level, right? Where somebody like me would be eating 300 grams of protein a day, or maybe 250 grams of protein a day. People have done it, but there's just not really any value. It's really truly between the 2 and 3 times RDA.
Yeah, I was just explaining to my clients that I'm usually a little bit above that, just as a buffer,
And you can experiment. That's where if that's your baseline, you can say, okay, now that maybe we want to reduce carbs a little bit, we can take 100 calories away from carbs, but I'm going to move you up 50 calories from protein just to create a little bit of a hinge point there. And you do have room. You have room to go up instead of down when you're deeper into the diet.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, stay tuned. We're going to talk about cardio next. How do you fit in cardio with all of the macros and the calorie deficits as we continue into the series on fat loss basics?